morning, good morning. Glad to have you join this morning. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. Hello, welcome. All you guys coming on the live stream here. Appreciate seeing you all here. This is Biniam on the Checkin In podcast. We get together on a weekly basis to do three things, which I'll tell you about momentarily. This is episode 39 of the Checkin In podcast. Episode 39. We're doing amazing on our consistency here. Today is Tuesday, August the 25th, 2021. On this podcast, the three things that we are focused on doing, and I invite you to join me as I engage, is number one, growing an awareness of ourselves. Growing an awareness of ourselves so that we can get to know ourselves really well. How do we operate? Why do we value the things we value? Number two, learning to be kind to ourselves. And then number three is maximizing our happiness. These are the things that I am committed to following through on. So, as I dive into this question that we're going to consider today, I want to invite you to participate. It is a Wednesday today. You're totally right, Mikey. My goodness, I lost a day there. Today is Wednesday. You're totally correct. Wednesday the 25th of August. Thanks for the heads up there. So, as I'm diving into today's question is, what do you take for granted? As I dive into this question here, I would love for you guys' participation as well. The question we're asking is, what do you take for granted? So, welcome to the Checkin In podcast. Glad to have you here with me today. The YouTube live stream is just still coming on live here, and so hopefully that'll kick in soon, but we'll carry on as we have the Instagram, the TikTok live stream, and of course the one on Spotify as well. So glad to have you guys join in. Welcome to the 39th episode of the Checkin In podcast. Again, the question we're asking today is, what do you take for granted? And as I dive into this question here, one of the things I'll be doing is, what I like to do first is, first of all, to consider the question. Why is this a good question for us to consider, and what are some of the parameters around it? So that is, that's what I'm going to be engaging in here. So here's why I think this question is really important as I consider answering it for myself. I like this question because, again, this is one of those questions that has to do with personal growth. Personal growth in the sense of being aware of how I've gone from point A to point B in the midst of my evolution as a person. What do I take for granted makes me look backwards by way of gratitude. And you guys, if you know anything about me, is I love expressions and opportunities to express gratitude. So I look back and think, what are those things that I may have forgotten to take account for and value, and say this is important and meaningful to me. And so this question is one of those questions as we consider what our personal growth looks like and how we grow in relation to looking backwards, and look at those areas that I and perhaps you don't reflect on because it doesn't become obvious that we should be focusing on this on an ongoing basis. And so that's what I'm committed to doing, the same. What does that look like for me, and accounting for things along the way where I'm like, this is worthwhile taking note of so that I can do something really important in relation to it. Hello, all you guys coming in. I take for granted, says Tropica, how rich I am. Often I forget my hot water works when I want it to. My AC works. I can go to the grocery store and purchase food, etc. I like that, Tropica. That's a really helpful one too. I'm going to share some of mine too. And usually for me, it's in reference to contrast. When I am expressing gratitude, what usually happens before I express gratitude for something is I have an opportunity to contrast. I have an ability to say, here's one thing, here's the other thing that I'm comparing and contrasting, and along those lines, what does that look like? Good morning, Seasai, how are you? So, the one question that we're considering today, what do you take for granted, causes us to look backwards and account for those things that usually fall between the gaps, that fall between the cracks, when we're thinking, I never thought to give credibility or notice to this experience, this event, this scenario, in such a way that I am walking away saying, I am really experiencing privilege. Just like Tropic was saying, I take for granted these very common things that I experience on an ongoing basis. And for him, he's saying his AC works when he needs it to, when he's hot. His heat works when he needs to have it working. And on top of that, also there is the component of going to the grocery store and getting food when you need. Like, these are some magnificent things. What are those things that we take for granted as we go through life in such a way that we're thinking, I should make note of this. This is something worthwhile taking note of so that I can express gratitude. It seems like gratitude is so deeply sewn into this reflection here. What do you take for granted? Because once you acknowledge it, it almost seems like the next thing to do is to say, I'm grateful for this. What is that you take for granted? And then how do you respond to it? Seems to be like the follow-up question as I consider the question on face value. I also like that it has to do with the awareness piece has to do with saying, hey, I'm not always on my game. I'm not always where I ought to be. And so that's something worthwhile considering. When we consider that we're not always where we ought to be, then for me, it causes me to say, how can I look for those opportunities when I'm not engaging as I ought to be engaging? What does that look like when I'm focusing on and engaging and following through on accounting for things that are like, this is really good? And so the reality is this. The reality is we are so prone to coasting in life. We're so prone to like letting our guard down. We're so prone to like sliding in and saying, hey, this is what this looks like. And so that's really important. And so along those lines, what does that look like for us to be able to say, what is important for me in acknowledging when I'm in that zone of coasting? What does that coasting look like? How does it express itself, especially when it comes to accounting for and making sure we don't coast? I really value intentionality in my life. And what intentionality for me usually looks like is saying, these moments that are passing by, how can I savor them? How can I say this is important and meaningful for me right now? And so the YouTube isn't live right now, so that's quite all right. And so in that event, I'll just post the Instagram feed onto the YouTube and we'll go that way. So I apologize for my YouTubers. It's still trying to go live for some reason, but here we are on the Instagram, TikTok, and of course on Spotify too. So come on Spotify and TikTok and Instagram and catch this episode here. Thanks for the heads up, Ollie. I appreciate that. It's just doing its thing for some reason. I think we'll just abandon the YouTube option today because it just isn't pulling through for us. So yeah, we'll just focus here on Instagram and the TikTok live stream. But I was just making the point saying that it's really important for me to be intentional when I'm going through experiences in life right now. It's really important for me to be intentional about the things I'm experiencing and savoring along the way and how I'm engaging and processing those. So along those lines, I want to take an accounting for those things I'm taking for granted, because I don't want to be taking things for granted. I don't want to lose the value of what I think is really important. And so that means I need to be on my game and saying, this is an important opportunity here that I'm going through in this experience. What can I learn from it? How can I benefit from it? And then when I catch myself dropping the ball and coasting, that's when I find that I usually am prone to take things for granted. I don't like taking things for granted, and so I commit myself to saying, how can I keep in this present zone where I am savoring things? That's the word I like to use, is savoring. Savoring for me is a slow way of appreciating something. Wine drinkers, when they take wine, before they ever let it down the hatch, as it were, they do a lot of assessing. They look at the consistency and the color and they appreciate that. They take a whiff and smell what it looks like. They do a swirl. They appreciate so many aspects before they let it go in. And even when they bring it into their mouth to taste, what do? They savor it. They try to understand the quality. They try to parse the difference, the flavors that they're tasting in the wine. And then finally they let it go down and they even assess that process. What does that look like for us to do the same in life? The question we're answering today is, what do you take for granted? My assessment is when we are coasting in life, which most of us do, myself included, when we coast in life, we're more prone to taking things for granted. We're more prone to taking things in such a way where we don't value the opportunity there. And so the way I think about it is, how can I slow down and savor the moments? That's what I need from me. How can I slow down to savor it? Did you notice that this question also involves that component of slowing down? When we're considering what do we take for granted, we're slowing down in this present moment to say, let's look backwards and consider what it is that we missed out on. What did we miss the opportunity to savor? And so it takes that slowing process, right? It's like pulling on the reins and saying, wait a second here, let's look back and see, is anything unaccounted for? Is there anything here that needs to be attended to? And so that's a really important process as we're going forward in this consideration of the question, what do you take for granted? And then as we slow down and then as we consider savoring whatever it is that we're reflecting on, it seems like gratitude is that outcome again for me. So the process in my experience is, first of all, takes a slowing down to look backwards and say, or maybe it's a present scenario that came up where you're like, oh, this is meaningful for the following reasons, and I need to slow down and consider what is before me. So that slowing down is first. Then the contrasting, which for me is a way of saying, let me consider that experience with maybe my experience. This scenario was something that I may be able to relate to once upon a time. And as I consider it, I want to savor it and say, this is really important for me. And that savoring comes in the third piece where I express gratitude, saying, this is a beautiful thing. I want to take note of this. One of the folks on here was saying, for them, it's the simplest things like being able to step in the shower and even have a shower. What an amazing thing. Imagine when you don't have access to that. Imagine when you don't have access to clean running water. Not only just clean running water, but also hot or warm, clean running water. I mean, we'd be satisfied with cold water as long as it's clean, right? But it's nicer to even have warm water that we can have access to, that's clean and that we can benefit from and get our needs served. That's an amazing thing. Imagine what an amazing thing it is when we're able to slow down, consider the contrast, saying this could be much worse. Consider places where they have recently been hit by some devastating things going on in that country, devastating things by way of, let's say, a tsunami or a hurricane, and now they don't have access to it. That experience that they're going through helps inform me to say, slow down here. There's something meaningful here that I can reflect on. Let me not take for granted what they don't have access to. They don't have access to clean running water for a warm shower. I do. So slow down, consider the contrast, and then express gratitude as I savor the opportunity. Express thankfulness. I'm so thankful I get to enjoy a warm shower. And then as I go and enjoy the warm shower, I'm like, this is so good. This is like amazing that I get the access to this. This event that I did all the time and totally took for granted has now become something worthwhile savoring. And this is a process that I see happening for me in reflecting on this question. How can I not take things for granted? So let me answer the question. What do I take for granted? So many things. But here's the ones that often come up on my radar. Most of you know that I'm an Uber driver, and so as an Uber driver, I'm all over the city, on the road, practicing good road, I'm being a safe driver, so I'm trying to stay on the road. That's really important to me as I keep going. But as I do my job, I often come across circumstances that are very unpleasant for other motorists, usually in the form of accidents and crashes. So whenever I pass by one of those crashes or accidents, one of the things I'm thinking is, here's contrast. I could be that individual. It could be my fault. It may not have been my fault. But I could be in the midst of that scenario or that circumstance where they're having a really bad day. What's happened now is they've been totally thrown off their schedule. They were not planning on being in an accident. These are the things that happen beyond our control. And as they're in the midst of that experience, their schedule is thrown off, their funds are probably questionable, and they're probably really distraught, thinking, how am I going to take care of this and on my schedule? And they're probably worried about their health. Do they get a whiplash? Do they affect someone else adversely? So many pressures. As I drive by those, all this is going through my mind, and internally, I'm reflecting with gratitude. So what happened is, I became aware by slowing down. I said, let me take note of what just happened here. They just had an accident. I'm passing by. I'm so glad that I'm not there. There's a contrast. Excuse me. And as they are in the midst of that really awful accident, I'm reflecting, saying, I'm so thankful that I'm not there. This is amazing for me not to experience what they're experiencing. I'm going to be thankful for it. I'm not going to take for granted that I had another safe day on the road in which I was able to do my job, and in doing my job I was able to get what I needed to do done. And so that's really important for me. And then finally, that issues by way of gratitude, where I'm like, so grateful for this right now. So thankful for this opportunity. And so that means a lot to me, that I'm able to do that. What are some of those other things? I pass by accidents on the road and I'm like, super grateful. I see someone who's maimed, or someone who's in a wheelchair, or someone who's on crutches, or someone who doesn't have their limbs, or someone who has some physical handicap. I pick them up and I'm thinking, you don't have access to your knees. I am so grateful for my knees all of a sudden. My attention has been brought to awareness of the unique jobs that my knees do, because I've seen someone else's circumstance that is not so favorable in their dynamic. And so I think, let me not take for granted that I can just walk. Like my sister and my kids and I were walking into Costco yesterday. And as we were walking, I was thinking, I'm so grateful that we can walk to the car. I remember why I was thinking that. I was like thinking, I'm so tired. I've been in the midst of this move for the last few days. I'm so exhausted physically. And my younger one wanted a piggyback, so of course I put them on my back, and I was thinking how tired I was while I was walking. But then I realized I'm so thankful I have limbs that work, so I can be mobile. Even if I had to walk home here without my car, I'd be sad that I didn't have my car, but I'm so thankful I can actually walk. That's an amazing thing, isn't it? A fantastic thing. Something else that makes me super grateful is when I get to work. I know what it's like when I didn't have work before, and when I was kind of stressing out over where's the money going to come from for the bills and the things that I'm obligated to pay for. So I'm thankful when I get to go to work. I'm thankful that I can have a job where I can control my own schedule. And the reason I'm thankful for that is because I'm reflecting on those who don't have that control. When I want, I can go to work. I can control my own work dynamic. I'm super grateful for that, really grateful. So I'm usually in this zone of taking an account for things that I usually take for granted when I do the contrast game with someone else. And usually that issues for me by way of saying, okay, this is worthwhile. And sometimes they are so impacting that I am ongoing reflecting with gratitude on those circumstances. I want to lock that in, saying, this is a privilege. This is an amazing thing. When I walk into a store with my wallet and I can pull up my card and pay for a service or goods, I'm saying, oh man, this is something I don't want to take for granted, because I know what it's like when I was without this opportunity. And that for me gets me super aware of saying, this is really important for me to express and to be in the midst of. So that's really important for me. It's usually in that contrast dynamic when I'm able to say, okay, I once didn't have this, but now I have access to this, so that's really important. My health is another one of those. When I don't have a headache, I'm often grateful, especially when I hear of someone else who has a headache or a migraine or chronic migraines. Oh, I do not know how they do it. I honestly don't know. But that makes me super grateful that I don't have that. And so I value that is not in my forecast. When I have things that work. For example, I just recently invested a significant amount in brakes for my vehicle, tires for my vehicle, a new windshield. So I know what it's like when those don't work. I know what it's like when my engine doesn't work, or when something malfunctions, and when it deprives me of transportation, mobility, and do my job. That is really frustrating, right? And so I know what it's like to be able to appreciate when I don't have access to these things. And so that for me is really meaningful. That's really a helpful thing for me to reflect on, saying, what an amazing thing that I can walk to my car, get in my car, and expect it to do what it's supposed to do when I turn it on, and continue to do my job. That is really, really something that I am very thankful for. Guys, I'm just waving to you as you're coming in here. So please take that as an acknowledgement of your presence and gratitude that you're here, even while I keep on the flow of thought that I'm carrying on. So when I answer the question again, what do I tend to take for granted most often? When I am, oh my goodness, thanks for being here. I appreciate you. When I consider what I do take for granted, it gets me to slow down, reflect, contrast, and then express gratitude. And this is part of that commitment I have in the 3 tiers that make up the reason for this podcast. Number 1, how can I be aware of my body? How can I be aware of my experiences? How can I be aware of those things that usually I would coast through in life? I was thinking about my time back in Saskatchewan when I was still living there, and on the mail run, and I knew some farmers along the way. I came across one butchering one of his older cows one day, and I watched in fascination as he cleaned it, as he cut it up into the various pieces, and I was thinking about how usually most of our reference in getting food, meat for example, isn't to go to the farmer to get it and watch that whole process. We go to a store where we can just conveniently look at a selection, pick our choice, and be on our way. We coast through life on these opportunities that mean something, right? And we forget to take note of them until something happens where we're like, slow down, become aware of how you're responding to this scenario here. And as you're becoming aware, consider the contrast. As you're becoming aware, consider the contrast. And as you're looking at the contrast, consider how you are ending up on the better side. You at least have food to eat. You have money to buy food. You have the means to go to the store to buy the food. You are able to satiate your hunger when you need to. Oh man. I walk sometimes down these restaurants, or even drive people to them, and I look at them on the way to eating out. Now, for a lot of these individuals, they do this often and ongoing. So it's lost its meaning. It's lost its meaning, right? They just kind of go through it and they have expectations, and so they don't savor it as I think they could be. And when they're engaged in these opportunities to experience these fantastic privileges, it's those of us who don't have access to them that are actually taking on and saying, this is going to be significant. For example, when someone says, let's go eat out, I'm like, I would love to. I don't do that very often. So for me, that's amazing. And when I go and eat out with them, it's like, oh, this is fantastic. How can I savor this opportunity? Why? Because I don't often get this opportunity. And so when I do get that opportunity, it's like, oh, this is meaningful. This is potent. And so that's one of the things I'm committed to when I am going through life, is saying, how can I become more intentional in my experience of what I'm facing, what I see coming my way here? How can I take those experiences, those scenarios, those opportunities, and be intentional about the way I respond to them? Not just letting it coast by and saying, whatever. No, saying, hey, how am I responding to this, and why is this important for me, and what do I want to take out of this consideration? That's a self-awareness piece there. That's the piece that says, how can I become more aware of me in the way I respond to things? Like, I know I get excited at the opportunity to go and eat out. Oh man, that's amazing. Yes, please. But when I don't get a chance to do that, what does that look like for me? when I don't get a chance to take note of these things and say, this is why this is meaningful, then we miss so many opportunities. We miss so many opportunities, dear friends, to be able to savor what goes on in life, and then eventually we'll look back and say, yeah. But when we consider this question that we're considering today of what do we take for granted, there's something really actionable there. There's something really actionable by way of response in the consideration. We're looking backwards or at the present, considering a certain dynamic, seeing the contrast and saying, yep, I may be taking showers for granted. I may be taking food for granted. I may be taking friendships for granted. I may be taking the chance to enjoy something really meaningful for granted. And in doing so, we have the opportunity to pivot and take a different track, one that reflects more what we want to see happening in our context. This is also worthwhile engaging in. And so that's why I'm presently committed to answering questions like this, because this, for me, is what continues to keep me on my game. This is, for me, what I need to ensure that I am in the right zone, on the right track, on the right pathway in growing more aware of myself, learning to be kind as I learn to be more aware of myself. So this kindness piece for you might look like, man, I don't consider this question as often as I do. I'm a terrible person because I take so much for granted. That's not being gracious with yourself. What does it look like for yourself to take a moment and express grace, saying, I may not be there yet, but I'm going to start looking for those opportunities, and I'm capable, I'm able to operate at this level. What does that look like for you to commit yourself to being kind as you go through this process of looking at experiences and scenarios in life that come your way in an intentional way, whereby you feel like you're growing into that experience of, I got this. It'll take some time. Give yourself grace there. And then, of course, this is going to issue in your happiness. It's going to maximize your happiness as you say, before I was complaining about having to stand in line, but look at this. I'm going to go from misery, having to stand in line, to something different where I'm going to say now, I value this. I am appreciative that I get a chance to, one, learn patience, two, with confidence, walk up to that counter and make my order. And in doing so, also know that I've got the money in the bank to do so. Know that I'm actually going to enjoy this experience. Know that this is something that is going to be very potent for me as I walk away from this experience. Not taking this for granted. Knowing that I am going to have people treat me with decency and respect while I'm out and about in society because I'm a fellow member of the human race. See, these are some beautiful things that we can enjoy as we consider our way forward and what that looks like. How can we grow in such a way that enables us to value and to savor? Savor is the word of the day for me. How can we savor these opportunities so we don't miss them? And so when we reflect on them, it helps us to sweeten that moment. It brings more flavor into that moment. It enables us to be able to say, hell yes, this is amazing. Thus far are my thoughts on this topic, this question that we're answering today on what do we take for granted? What do we take for granted? These are really important moments for me as I continue to immerse myself and engage in this exercise with you guys. The reason I do this podcast is because I want to be able to serve you guys really well in what could be in the way that we're growing forward in our experience. What does it look like for us to go forward in becoming better versions of ourselves? What does it mean for us to be able to become that next level of who we are, next level of Biniam for me, and whoever you guys are, from Thomas to Asdes to Ollie and every one of you? What does that look like for you to grow into that context in which you are saying, this is me now, and here's what I value and why I value what I value? I want to invite you guys to join me in this process of growing together. And for me, what that looks like is I'm building together a community on my website, biniamasters.com. On my membership tier there is going to be access whereby in a one-on-one way, in the context of a group and one-on-one, we'll have the opportunity to inspire and encourage each other to say, what does this look like for us to become more aware of ourselves? What does it look like for us to grow kind to ourselves as we process what that awareness piece is revealing to us about ourselves? And finally, how can we maximize our happiness? I am so committed to experiencing what this looks like for me. I want to invite you guys to join me along the same track. Aside from technology challenges today and those ongoing challenges that come along in making this work, I believe strongly in what we're doing here. And I hope you do as well. I hope you'll join me as well. And together, let's make something that is worthwhile reflecting on a year from now, saying, wow, we have made a tremendous investment. This is really potent. This is really meaningful. This is really worthwhile. I hope you'll come along. BennyMasters.com. Go check it out today. Join my membership. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great Wednesday. Bye for now.